Good morning, and once again, welcome to Friday Thoughts, Living Faithfully Together. Each week it's both a joy and sometimes a little of a challenge to figure out what do I share with you this week. And I've been thinking a lot about our whole Lenten series where hope changes everything. And part of the material we've been using is a book entitled Apprentice to Hope, a source book for difficult times by Julie Naris. And we've picked some of the themes from this book. We've done things like Apprentice to Hope, the nature of hope, how it differs from optimism. We've addressed hope in the imagination, help as hope's companion, borrowing hope. We'll talk about hope as a choice, or how hope seeks a bigger picture, how sometimes hope takes work. That's for Good Friday, and certainly the rebirth of hope on Easter. But there's one chapter that really struck me. It's called Our Heritage of Hope. And it simply asks the question, how does hope happen? What is our heritage of hope? And as I was reading through that chapter, I was really struck by a verse that I remembered from 2 Timothy chapter 1, where Paul, talking to Timothy, reminds him of this. I thank God whom I serve with a clear conscience, as did my fathers, when I remember you constantly in my prayers. And as I remember your tears, I long night and day to see you, that I may be filled with joy. For I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells within you. And so I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you through the laying on of hands. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but rather a spirit of power and of love and a sound mind. Well, I join with Paul in saying, I pray for you constantly, and I miss you, and I long to see you face to face. And in the meantime, I find solace in remembering the faith in you that's in the ones you love and those who have gone before you. That this is a congregation that has a heritage of faith and a heritage of hope. And so I was talking about this with staff this week and reminded them, if we are fortunate enough to have known our grandparents, we may be more conscious of their ways of translating the world than we are even of our parents. We sense as children that they, along with older aunts and uncles, occupy a much different place in our world than parents do. Their anxieties and opinions can differ sharply from our parents, offering points of comparison. And I thought that was really interesting. And it goes on to ask the question, can hope be passed to the next generation? And it uses a story, an example of a father and a son, and asks the question, can we impart and pass hope along to the next generation? Or to anyone for that matter, friends, spouses, acquaintances, and so on. And so she says, I've often turned to Scott Russell Sanders' book, Hunting for Hope. And she quotes an essay by a writer, a professor, and a father who has a conversation and a confrontation with his son Jesse, who was at the time 18. They're hiking together in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and there's a tension that exists between them. Maybe it's the fact he's 18 and pushing away, getting ready to leave the home. But the tension between them is more than just a predictable spat between a teenager and a parent. His father's worldview, with its attending lack of hope, bothered Jesse for some time. Jesse felt his dad hated everything that he liked, movies, television, music, billboards, snowmobiles, jet skis, all of that stuff. And finally he let go this pent-up rage. Dad, you hate everything that's fun. Your view of things is totally dark. It bums me out. You make me feel like the planet is dying and people are to blame and that nothing can be done about it. There's no room for hope. Well, maybe you can get by without hope, but I can't. I've got a lot of living to do. I have to believe that there's a way we can get out of this mess. Otherwise, what's the point? Now, Had Jesse's dad really deprived Jesse of hope? It was a strong indictment that his son had. And I think maybe it wasn't that way as much as this interaction that took place. But it went on to remind Julie Neris that the first condition of hope is simply to believe that you will have a future, and the second condition is to believe that there will be a decent world to inhabit. And sometimes we forget that. So I've been thinking about that, and like I suspect most people, I went through my ups and downs. My parents were really wonderful when I was very young, and in the teenage years, you know how it goes. They suddenly were not so cool. They became much better listeners and had much more wisdom after I grew up and got older and had children of my own, and our conversations changed. But the interesting constant for me was the fact that I had a grandmother who lived in my hometown, and she was a good listener. She was stubborn, she was opinionated, but she was also deeply and profoundly faithful, and most of all, a mother bear, protective of her grandchildren. And no matter what we did, no matter what wrong we may have committed, we could always count on Grandma to be there in our corner. And I think she passed on that gift of hope in its own way. And so later on, Julie Neris asked, how is hope transmitted? Just how did grandparents transmit hope to us? For the most part, it was not what they shared verbally at all. In fact, I barely can remember any conversation with my grandparents until I was at least 16. Hope is not something that they spoke of directly, but rather it was embodied in their habits of hard work, their resourcefulness, in their silences. Its public face in them was endurance and the satisfaction of living with integrity, their allegiance to honesty and humility. It was in the physical doing of things that they loved us, and by fixing the broken bicycle or repairing the torn coats, making cribs for our dolls and desks for us to tend to homework, they passed on hope. It was palpable, obvious, and they were there for us. You know, that's what I think about. Hope is a heritage passed on by how we live together in community, how we care for one another, how we treat one another. Yes, it's some of the things we say, but it's also how we actually treat one another, with respect, with love, with honor, and yes, with hard work. And I find Trinity to be a profound place with a rich heritage of hope and service, where our words and our actions go together. And that's one of the things I cherish most about this place, and what I miss most in this time of transition. So yes, we're planning for that first service, April 11th, a little over 3 weeks away. We're looking forward to it as we look forward to seeing one another so wonderfully together. But in the meantime, don't give up hope. Hold on to the promises. Hold on to one another and the heritage that we have dear, something that is a gift to all of us and that we will pass on to the next generation. I'm excited that we're coming down to the end of separation. There's a ways yet to go, but we're moving it forward one step at a time, attending to the details and being intentional about continuing that message of care for one another. That will not stop even once we get together in person again. So thanks for being part of the heritage of hope that touches my life and keeps me going. Thanks for being who you are. I miss you, but I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.